a member of our committee and joining us this evening. We're very fortunate to be joined by Seth Pickering and Will DeArjo, who are with the Massachusetts Department of Energy Resources, who are here to talk to us about the Stretch Energy Code. Hingham is proposing at town meeting on the 23rd to adopt the Stretch Energy Code for use in the town. And these gentlemen are here to present to us what that means and the implications. And we're also fortunate to have in the audience this evening Emily Wentworth and Michael Clancy with the town, the Building Commission and the Zoning Administration, who are also available to help answer any questions that folks may have. The reason we are looking to embark on this, or I should say the primary reason, is that the Energy Action Committee, in conjunction with town administration and the selectmen, and with the approval of the advisory committee, have been looking to push Hingham to become a green community. That is a Massachusetts state-sponsored program that when you become a member, a green community member, they make available funding for various energy efficiency and improvement projects throughout the town. In order to join that or become a green community, there are many things, or several things, that a town must do, one of which is to adopt the Stretch Energy Code or have something equivalent, but the easiest route and the most common route is to go with the Stretch Energy Code. Hingham right now is in the minority of towns in Massachusetts in that it is not a green community. We are surrounded by green communities except for Hull, and there are I believe, is it 281 now that have become green communities?
210.
210. I'm a little ambitious here.
So these are for us to be recorded. Oh, am I being? Oh, okay. I talk loud anyway.
I'm sorry. It's the green light is on.
I think that's for recording, Brad. I don't think it's for amplification.
It's not for amplification. All right, then I'll just shout. Sorry. So yeah, there are currently 210 green communities out of 351 communities in Massachusetts, and so we're looking to become a green community member, which would provide significant funding for us to embark on multiple improvements in the town for energy use standpoint. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the program over to Seth and Will. I'm going to dim the lights to make it easier to see the presentation, but please, if at any point you have questions, feel free to interrupt, raise your hand, come to the microphone. We'd like to hear what you have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. So my name's Seth Pickering. I'm the Regional Coordinator for the Green Communities Division of the Department of Energy Resources here in Massachusetts, and Hingham's in my region. This is Will DeArjo. He'll be doing the stretch code portion of the presentation. I've just got a couple slides to go over some of the stuff that Brad's already spoken about. So what does our program do? So the reason that we're here to talk about this, the stretch code is to become designated as a green community. Hingham's going to have to basically adopt the stretch code here as the building code for energy. What we do in the Green Communities Division is we provide up to $20 million annually for qualifying communities to fund energy efficiency projects. And we've done over $85 million of grants to date, and hopefully we'll continue to do so with new and existing green communities. Our funding is strong, comes from a couple different sources, but it has included Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative auction proceeds and alternative compliance payments from the Renewable Portfolio Standard. There are the 5 criteria, and we're going to talk about number 5 tonight. So that's a pretty blurry graphic, so I'm going to apologize, but I think you can kind of get the picture. We're actually up to 217 municipalities that have adopted the stretch code to date here in Massachusetts out of 351, and that constitutes 72% of the population. So by a pretty wide margin, the stretch code is the norm now in Massachusetts and not the exception. Can't really see very closely, but up in this part of the state, Most of your neighbors have adopted the code, and the builders and the building inspectors in the area are very knowledgeable in what it takes to meet the code. So here are the 210 green communities. We had 25 new ones designated in December of 2017. We're currently in the process now of talking to towns like Hingham about adoption of the stretch code and doing the things that are required to become green communities. And we are expecting that in this year we'll have as many as 20 to another 30 applicants for green community status. You can see the South Shore is pretty well represented. So the way the designation grants work is they're based on a formula, town population per capita income with a minimum of $125,000 for the designation grant. I've looked at some comps for Hingham with your population and your per capita income. Probably the initial grant would be about $150,000. But after your initial grants, you're also eligible for what we call competitive grants, potentially on an annual basis, and those can be up to $250,000 of our grant money. And so you can see a couple of your neighbors that have been in the program for a couple of years, Cohasset and Hanover, got their initial designation grants, but they've also gotten competitive grants. And you can see Hanover, that's been in the program for quite some time, has received over $1 million in grants from us to do things like lighting, heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, things in their infrastructure with pumps and drives and things of that nature. So again, Norwell has had one grant, Situate's had a number as well, and Weymouth has received 2 grants from us to date. So I'm going to hand it over to Will, and he's going to talk about the stretch code. You know, however the people in the audience would like to have this go, you know, it's informal. So if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand, and we'll recognize you and let you ask your questions as we go along.
Right. The only thing I would ask is that if you do have a question, please come to the microphone. Since this is being recorded, anyone listening to this afterwards can get the benefit of your question. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. Again, so my name is Will. I've been with ICF now 4 years, and under the Mass Save umbrella, I've been with basically 15 years. I started off as a HERS rater. We're going to talk a little bit about that tonight, what that is, what that means. And I also kind of want to just let you know, too, that I've also got some rental properties. So I have a partner, and we've done a couple of rehab buildings, and I can speak kind of firsthand on why this is kind of important and why it matters and why it's worth doing. So that being said, minimizing life cycle costs. How do you do that? You basically gotta reduce your energy footprint. Doing that, you're gonna be paying less bills every month. That's gonna save you some money. So overall, for criteria 5, that's what, you know, a way to get there is by using the stretch code for homes. I'm gonna talk a little bit about the new code, the stretch code itself. There's a couple changes that just happened actually beginning of this year. Massachusetts went to the 9th edition. Which I think is mentioned on this next slide here. And so this is an appendix to the 9th edition of the code. It follows the 2015 IECC, and that's the International Energy Conservation Code. And then the ASHRAE 90.1, that's more for commercial buildings. I don't remember what the acronym is for ASHRAE, but I can get it to you if you're definitely curious. I'll leave some cards up here at the end.
American Society for Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, I believe.
Look at you. Wow. You got it. Yeah, so I don't know where you got that one, but yeah, pretty sure that's right.
Yeah, don't check to see if he's accurate.
I'm pretty confident on that.
Yeah. But yeah, so there's been a lot of training for building officials. It's continually going. There's another part of the Mass Save umbrella that does continuing education. So you can look into that as well on the Mass Save website. The basics of what the stretch code is, I want to actually talk about what it is not first. So there's some misconceptions. People kind of think stretch code is new, experimental. It's not. At this point, it's been around in Massachusetts for over 6 years. And it's based on Energy Star Homes platform. These homes have been around for 20 plus years. And again, I talked about me joining up. I was doing this 15 years ago, home energy ratings. And And back then, yes, I could say it was a little bit difficult. But back then, people were building a 2x4 wall with the worst insulation you could put in a wall, and everybody was spending a ton of money on energy. Now, you'll see it with just even base code, you got to do a 2x6 wall, or you could do a 2x4 wall, but you got to have exterior insulation. So you got to, there's already things you have to do. It's not, it's not kind of this crazy experiment that people are doing. It's pretty basic. Again, stretch code, it's a tight home, it's unhealthy, the air's bad. Again, no, building science is there. You can set up different types of ventilation systems, and they're as basic as a bathroom fan on a timer. And that's all you need. You can get the new air in that you need. And if people were that worried about it, they could leave the window open all day. I mean, that would be silly. The whole point is to make these things tighter, but the idea that this is an unhealthy home is just not true. It's kind of giving up local control. That's another thing that people are kind of worried about. In this particular case for stretch code, if the town decides, they can actually opt out. So there's no reason why you wouldn't give it a try and go forward with it. A couple other ones, town residents have to update their homes. Again, this only applies to new construction. If you own a home, you're not having to do anything different. Nothing's changing for you. So it's applying to, residential new construction, so brand new homes, that's going up, and then new commercial construction. And again, this is only over 100,000 square feet, so you're thinking of something like a big box store, like a Home Depot, if they're coming in, they'll have to do this ASHRAE energy model. So, and I'll speak to it a little bit more.
And
Sure.
Will, if you don't mind if I jump in on 1 second. So Will's point about giving up local control, you must adopt the stretch code by a town vote. You can also opt out of the stretch code by a subsequent town vote. However, no town that I'm aware of, and gentlemen, keep me honest, that has adopted the stretch code has ever revoked it. So it's those who have implemented it have done so successfully and are continuing to live with it for many years. As Will had mentioned, towns have adopted this for at least
Right.
6+ years.
So, yeah, no one's rescinded the stretch code in any of our 216, 17 towns that have done it. The real meaning of this slide is that you, as the building commissioner inspector here in town, still have all the autonomy that you ever have. But this makes it part of the building code here in town.
So being a stretch, again, I kind of talked about the misconceptions. In 2017, we adopted IACC 2015. I talked about that. It means that, it's just not really a stretch. I can kind of tell you, and in a couple slides I will, that if you're looking at it, there's no difference. Like, there's not like a new book that you're looking to. It's still the same book that you're looking for. You're just going the performance path versus the prescriptive path. And again, I'll kind of get into that a little bit further down the road. The basic difference in the cost for the home energy rating, typically $700 to $1,200, and I believe those costs are even lower at this point, because again, you already have to, by base code, hire somebody in a new construction home to come out to the site to do some testing. The stretch kind of is looking a little bit more at the performance part for the whole building model. So it's really you're paying somebody to do an extra energy model. That's kind of the difference there. Again, Mass Save has some incentives, as well as the DOER. And again, we'll talk about that in a couple slides down the road.
Again, sorry to interrupt. You're going to get sick of me
Energy.
soon.
No, it's okay.
One thing just to emphasize here is those cost savings are for a typical single-family home. As you can imagine, in a town like Hingham, the construction sizes varies. We have some very large homes and some very small homes, and so those cost range would blow out when we're talking typical. I don't know if we have a standard square footage arrangement.
We do.
You do?
Yeah, we'll have examples that use
Okay, great.
Yeah.
a generic size home here in Massachusetts.
Yep. And the other one, yeah, no, it's a problem. And it was also Energy, remind me again?
New England.
Energy New England is also doing something for the municipal territories in town here.
Right, so just to clarify on that, so Paul, you guys work with E&E and have your own energy efficiency rebates and incentives that are
We do.
available?
The light plant has a series of, not programs, but ways that we give rebate credits for, windows, insulation, high efficiency appliances, And Energy New England also does the energy audits for the light plant in town.
Which is a great deal for people that live in a municipal light plant town, because they're not required to do it.
And you kind of just covered my slide for me, so. You got
Also, yeah,
windows, you know. But you do.
Yeah,
you
go
got-
through it, though.
You got a few of them there. So I mean, insulation, doors, windows, mechanical equipment, lighting, and again, through the Mass Save program, you can get those for free. Building tightness and renewables. So there's quite a few there. And again, these incentives help that little bit of a difference that you might need to change.
What do you mean by renewables?
If you don't need it, but if you wanted to go with solar, there's some incentive to do that.
Thank you.
No problem. So we kind of say, why test performance? Right when I kind of introduced myself, I talked about, also building some homes. If you're just doing prescriptive, it doesn't guarantee you a good installation. On a building side, I have tenants. So it's a pain to do turnover. Turnover is a huge thing for a landlord. If you got to kind of go back, you get calls. Like if I have to go call because somebody's window's leaky, or they get a draft, or their heating system doesn't work, or this or that, that's a nightmare. With performance testing, you're making sure that doesn't happen in the first place. These little air gaps that you kind of find where, somebody just kind of tucks an insulation into a corner and they're done, it's because they just have to meet that. That really degrades how the insulation works. By testing performance and having a rater come on site, they're making sure that it's done the right way. The builder's getting what they paid for by having this other person come in. It's an extra set of eyes, and that's the whole principle behind this. The HERS process, and again, in case I keep saying HERS, the HERS means Home Energy Rating System. That's what HERS stands for. So the process is you get the plans from the builder. They're going to create this energy model. They're going to predict how much energy the home might use, whether it's 2,000 square feet, 4,000 square feet, 700 square feet, whatever it is. They make a little energy model. They put in all the windows. They check the orientation. They do all those little pieces. So that's one part. The next part that's in this little circle, right over here, this is already part of code. So first inspection, duct testing, that's got to be done, even without the stretch code. So that's when I say you got to hire somebody already. You're already hiring this guy here to come in, even if you're just at base code. So the stretch, again, is not
So Hingham's doing that today.
right. It's already being done here in town. So they're coming in. There's a second inspection. You're having your blower torch test, which is this machine right here. It's doing depressurizing the home. And then the final, again, this is going back to your HERS rater. He's taking all the measurements, everything that he got from that day, and he's putting it back into this model and creating a real kind of predictor of what these homes are. I can tell you from a project I worked on for Boston, it was the E+ homes, and you can go check this out online, which is pretty neat. Again, it's green buildings, energy positive Boston. You go on, I did a model for a building. We saved a year of data. So this is, there's obviously variables, right? Occupants can leave TVs on all day or lights on all day, or something could happen. So models, they are what they are. We modeled this building. After a year of use, we were within 1,000 kilowatts of what was actually used over a year of time, predicted from that model. So that's pretty accurate. It's pretty close, and it works pretty well. So that's basically the process. Pretty straightforward. And again, I just kind of said, what is HERS? So the Home Energy Rating System, it's looking at everything kind of just talked about. It's the annualized analysis of your heating systems, even your appliances. So you got set run times, when are you going to do your dishes, all that stuff. It gets all kind of looked into in this software. The reference home, it's based on a home from 2006, and that's at 100. So back then, 100 points, that was 2006. We're in 2018. I mean, more than 12 years later. We're looking for a HERS index of 55. So each point that you do better than the 100, it's compared to a savings. So that, yeah.
Yeah, so if I can and that scale is linear. So what that basically means is a scale of 100 home from 2006. A 55 is 45% more energy efficient than that 100 house.
Mm-hmm.
So your stretch code house today would be 45% more energy efficient than a new house that was built in 2006 to a 100 HERS rating.
Right. And that's what I mean. When I was doing ratings back then, they were, the houses back then, the way they were building them were pretty, if you could think about it in an energy perspective, it's the stuff that you don't see. It's behind the walls. They were pretty bad. And nowadays, with this process, it's gotten a lot better.
I live in one of those houses. It's drafty. Systems don't work right.
And again, going back to it, so base, you're typically at a 62 without any kind of major changes. So for the commercial stretch energy code, we won't spend too much time on this one because it's a little bit, again, I don't know if you guys have too many big buildings going up in town.
They have industrial zone, they have
few,
good-sized industrial zone, yeah.
Yeah, and there are a number of spots where there are apartments going, decent-sized
And
apartments.
he's
buildings.
familiar with those. Those are the ones we were talking
Yeah, the
about.
shipyard.
At
Yeah,
the
that
shipping
one
shipyard,
stays.
There's a number in town.
Right. That stays on the low side anyway. This one's more for, like I said, the bigger, let's say like a Home Depot's coming in. They'd have to do this, but there's already cost sharing that they already get to do with National Grid. And
If they're a gas customer.
if they're a gas customer, yeah. I can't imagine a big, they might not, but yeah. Either way, there's the way they do it is very similar to the HERS rating process. They don't have the commissioning piece, though. They just have to make the energy modeling. So again, it's applying to these labs, supermarkets, these warehouses, and because it's national, this is picking up everywhere. So any other state that has, the 2015, or even some states are already at 2018 IACC, which is already required. So again, it's not a major stretch.
And most developers of things that size want to do the energy efficiency anyway because of the rebates and incentives that are available, and then it lowers their overhead down the road.
Exactly.
If they end up owning the building and leasing them out, so.
So documentation, again, the difference here is mostly what I've been talking about kind of as the difference is this energy model. A builder will go in, they can submit the plan. So look at they'll submit the certificate that they produce from the set of plans that they take. So it's just a pretty basic, it's a one-page form. So that's all they're really producing. It's got the HERS index on it, it's got some information about the house, and it covers all the little different pieces that you would need. So it's very straightforward in terms of paperwork. For the large commercial building, I talked about the energy model. This one's a little bit more in-depth, but again, the software, the modeling software, prints all these reports generically. So quickly, we'll talk about some of the incentives that I was mentioning.
Right, and so just a reminder, because you're municipal light, not all the Mass Save electric stuff is available, but anybody who's a National Grid gas customer has eligibility for Mass Save.
Exactly. So there's, so kind of what Seth just said. The modeling, I kind of talked about it. Again, the fees, that's where there's like a little bit of that difference there. It's between $50 to $350, depending on how complex the house is. If you have a straight rectangular ranch, it's going to take a guy, an hour to put together. If you've got a, 4,000 square foot with hip roofs and everything else, then it's a little bit, takes a little bit more time. So that's really what you're paying for, is the time to somebody to make these models. The pay for savings, so the better the house does in performance-wise, the more of an incentive they will receive. And then the lighting, again, if you're a National Grid customer, it's free, so.
But Hingham Light has a program.
As
The
well,
program
yes.
through E&E.
Correct.
Yep. Commercial incentives, again, I know this is pretty small, but they can do it a couple different ways. I had mentioned that there's a cost-sharing service for making the model. There's also just straight prescriptive measures. So if a company, let's say even a larger size restaurant or something came in, I don't know, it's got to be pretty big, but they could just apply just for equipment prescriptively. They'd buy specific equipment, they'd be able to get a certain rebate. So it's a one-for-one. The large retrofit program, again, they can do things like, potentially maybe even with Energy New England, could do lighting as well there. So there's a bunch of little different options out there. And again, these can all be found right on the Mass Save website, so you can check it out there.
And the details around HMLP's program is on our website also.
And then we've got, so here's where we kind of have a little breakdown of, this is going to be a natural gas home. We'll use this example. We do have others, and I'll actually speak to another just because we're in a different scenario here where we have, municipal light, and then in some places you'll have natural gas. If you were, oil, we'll discuss that. But again, let's look at natural gas. Let's say, I talked about the base code. Let's see if we can see it here.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's example here is, I think it's a 66 on the screen.
So, well, if you don't mind, so if you look at the top, so when we had these done, we tried to come up with the average house in Massachusetts, okay? So it's about a 2,550 square foot house. We used Worcester because it's centrally located. And so if you see that HERS index box up there, if this was a base code house, the HERS rating would be about a 66. So we're shooting for a 55 to
Yep.
meet the stretch code.
I don't have my glasses on either, so it looks like a 99 to me. But anyway, yeah, so with that, the cost to a builder, again, since we have to go from, an example home with the base, we're trying to hit the target of the 55, there are a couple things that you might need to change. So there are trade-offs with that, though. So like, let's say you plan on doing like a nice little kind of like a cathedral to your home, or you want to have some neat features. Prescriptively, it's hard to do because you have to have R49 in this attic. That's what they require. With the model, you can kind of adjust, you can make adjustments there, so you're going to have a little bit different thing. So again, there's some costs associated with that. To the builder overall, it's maybe going to cost them about $2,600 there to get to that 55. With the rebates, they're getting back $1,600, and that's, again, through the model, they submit it, and how, the better they do, the bigger that number is going to be. And then you get the net. So overall, the cost to build to this builder was only $975. To the home buyer, if they pass on the costs, their change to the mortgage payment is $97.
Down payment.
Down payment, sorry. To the down payment is $97. Their annual mortgage payment is, an additional $77.
So that's your annual mortgage payment.
Annual, yep, total to the addition. And then your savings, $200 a month. So your positive cash flow for the buyer, day one, you're making out. And every year after that, you're saving $135 because your utility bills are less. So.
And that's using the assumptions in the footnotes down the bottom, which are, fairly generic. It's got, there's certain things about that would be a little different in Hingham because your electric rates are going to be lower. So that's a good thing out of pocket. It changes this a little bit. But again, on your heating and fuels and stuff, the assumptions here are pretty, they're pretty conservative, all things considered. And it's a 30-year mortgage with a 10% down payment at 4%.
And then, so the cost behind that, so here's the difference. You've got your base code here on the left. That's what you typically would just throw in. That's what's required at a minimum by code. To stretch, here's what we kind of change a little bit. So we are putting in just a little bit different of a window. Again, at this point, the cost is very minimal. It's almost just a different gas in the window. So, let's say we add $500 there. Heating, we're going from like a 92% furnace to a 96. Again, you're not paying anything. There's no labor difference. It's just a different type of equipment, so you're paying that difference. Same thing happens with cooling. The hot water, it's all the same idea. The one that's a little bit, there's no cost to the duct piece. It's more just labor because you're just doing a little bit better job detailing and tightening up that ductwork. Everything else remains the same. So looking at, floors, even that test that's required by base code, that stays the same. So.
Gentlemen, so for the changes with the stretch code, those are optional, correct? So you could do different things there to achieve the same HERS rating. So maybe
Exactly.
I want different insulation, and I'm going to keep the boiler at a lower efficiency. That might not be the smartest move, but
Right.
depending on how the numbers work out, that could work as well, correct?
Exactly.
So the thing with the base code is it's prescriptive. You have to do what's in there.
Yep.
If you do a HERS-rated house, you can have design trade-offs. You can do more of something and less of another thing if it meets the unique design of the house that you want to have built. So, we assume that the lighting, air infiltration, foundation, floors, walls, ceiling stuff would all be the same, base and stretch, and show the differences between mostly the mechanical equipment. But, there's other ways to, get to that 55 if you choose to do so, and it comes out of the computer model and the testing that's done on the house.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And one of the biggest ones right now that we kind of talked about is this air infiltration number. And it's come down a long way. Again, in 2006, there was no measured number. You didn't have to hit any target. Now it's looking at 3. You could probably avoid all of this if you got this down to like a 1. That could be the only difference you'd have to do. it's difficult, but it could be done, and it's just a little bit of detail. It's paying attention to air sealing, steps like that. So that's, again, those trade-offs are there. I know that we have a couple other examples. They're not on this slide just because it doesn't really apply. Like, we have here, if you were to do, let's say if you were with oil or if you were with propane. Propane would fit almost the same breakdown. You just wouldn't obviously get the gas incentive unless Energy New England has a similar offering.
Is natural gas offered in all of town? Is it available?
No.
Everywhere?
No.
And what are people's fuel of choice if they can't use natural gas here? Are they still doing
So
oil?
it'd be mostly oil. There's not that much electric heat.
Would that be in existing neighborhoods as opposed to new residential
Some
construction?
homes also do propane,
Propane? Okay.
not nearly as popular as oil.
Okay.
Michael, do you have a sense of how big of the area of the town is covered by the gas company, natural gas?
I would say it's about 70.
70?
So pretty good amount.
Yep. So, yeah, so I guess then with that, I mean, you could compare this if you did, again, I kind of talked about like rebates, but in terms of what you have to do, if you went with propane, it would still fit this scenario in terms of meeting the stretch code. One option that I'm going to build out eventually is that you could go to air source heat pumps. And again, me talking about like earlier when I said that I have a partner, we've done some renovations, we've done heat pumps. And I can tell you they're great. There's a new incentive from the DOER for up to $3,000 for a type of system. And again, you could do it, there's different types. You might have heard of like mini splits, ductless systems that they hang on the wall. They also have central systems that they don't look anything different. You would have an outdoor condenser for air conditioning, and your indoor would look like a furnace. It's just an air handler cabinet. But they've come a long way. Again, like there's different manufacturers, like you can hear of like Carrier or Train. If you look up like Carrier Greenspeed, you'd see these things out there, and they look exact, like you'd have ductwork, you'd have everything set up the same exact way you would in a traditional house. And they work great. I mean, they're able to go down really, really deep in terms of how cold it gets and still function, giving you the right amount of heat. So I just want to throw it out there because again, this incentive just came out in February, and you were going to say?
So if you go to our website, all these different types of options are identified there. And at first, it's a little hard for somebody like of my vintage to get my brain wrapped around, heating and cooling a house with electricity only. But it's not electric heat like I would think that it was, back in the day, resistive heat on the sides of the walls and stuff like that. It's these heat pumps that will actually squeeze the heat out of very cold air and heat your house very efficiently. And the same units will air condition your house in the summer as well.
Exactly, yeah. So I've installed 12 of them now, and again, my tenants love them. It's separated out. The example that I had was I had a 6-family building. It had one central boiler, and I was paying $900 a month for heating. And some tenants on the second floor would have their windows open. People on the first floor were freezing, and we were just paying for heat going out the window. With the heat pumps, we were able to separate all the utilities. Now they pay their own, but they're small bills because they're sharing, the load. And these heat pumps, they do such a great job. And again, like Seth said, they're doing your heating and cooling. So it's it's an all for one. I advocate for them because they're, for me as a builder, I mean, again, they're paying the bill. I could have just stuck in strip heat and done it cheaply, but I know that would be an issue in terms of trying to keep these tenants. I don't want to have crazy bills. So for me, it worked out great. With that, that's all I got for you tonight. So if there are any questions, fire away.
One thing I'd like to emphasize, because I apologize, I can't recall if it came up, but the stretch code applies to new construction only.
Right.
It does not apply to renovations. Now, some of the energy incentives that we discussed today can apply to renovations or existing structures. So I do encourage you, if you're on gas, to reach out to Mass Save, or with electric to the Light Department and Energy New England to take advantage of those at any point in time. With that, please, I'll turn on the light.
Yeah.
I don't know if I need to turn it on or anything. Anyway, Elliott Place, I live at 91 Kimball Beach Road. And not building a new place, so a lot of this is irrelevant. But if this is as obvious as you guys make it out to be, how come Hingham didn't adopt this long ago, like 2010 or.
So you want me to answer that one? So we're really lucky that Hingham's eligible to be a green community because originally, the way the legislation was written and the way it was interpreted, because you're serviced by a municipal light plant, you wouldn't be eligible to become a green community unless Paul's organization paid into the Renewable Energy Trust. A number of years ago, a previous Secretary of Energy and Environmental Affairs decided that if there were investor-owned utility customers within the municipal boundaries of towns that were served by municipal light plants, then we would allow them to apply for designation. It's a little bit of a, some people want to call it a loophole. It's not a loophole because, quite honestly, it's fair. Because, as Paul well knows, most of the sources of our revenue have come from what it costs to basically consume electricity here in Massachusetts, whether you're an MLP customer or whether you're a National Grid, Eversource, or any other MLP customer. So it's really getting the money available to towns that can qualify. And so that decision wasn't made until probably 2012, 2013. So that's why we're a little bit behind, on the initial implementation. And then we've been talking ever since. The changes to the stretch code and the base code that happened January 1st of 2017 that brought the two codes very close together made a big difference so far in my region as well. Because it was a bigger stretch before.
It was, yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Absolutely, yeah.
I live as simple as he does, but my question is, there were 5 criteria to be a green community.
Yep.
This addresses one of them. What are the other 4? And does that, do we have to comply with all 5 to get the grant money?
Yes.
We do. So I can address those quickly. So we already comply with 2 of them. So there is, you have to have zoning to allow.
So Brad, I get the
Oh, you've got
slide
it
up there.
Perfect. Thank you.
So there are the criteria, the 5 on the bottom.
So the as-of-right siting for renewable energy, alternative energy generation, our current zoning regulations are already broadly enough drafted to cover that component. And then it also requires that you provide an answer, either a yes or no, within a year. That's the expedited process. We already do that in 6 months. So we satisfy those 2 criteria. The Create an Energy Reduction Plan, that's something that we will need to do. We weren't going to move forward on that until town vote decision whether to adopt the stretch code. We are a member of the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is a state body that provides resources and grants to help with these endeavors, and we're looking to apply for one so that they can help us develop that baseline and plan. And there are various software tools available to make it easier to catalog your energy usage, which we're already taking advantage of. So there will be some work there, but hopefully no cost to do that work. And then the fuel-efficient vehicle policy, that is where the town commits to purchase, as vehicles are retired, to purchase fuel-efficient vehicles that meet state standards. We've done an inventory of every vehicle in town. We've determined that if you buy that exact same car, but the current model, that we would meet those state requirements. And on top of that, many of the vehicles are actually exempt. So like police cruisers, many DPW, heavy trucks, fire trucks and things of that nature. There aren't commercially available fuel-efficient vehicles, so they're automatically exempt. So it's not quite as onerous as it sounds. And then, of course,
So-
the stretch code.
What's not exempt then?
It's not exempt. So any, so it's a good question. So let's say the town, I don't know that he does, so Tom may or may not kill me, but let's say Tom has a car that the town
town-owned
provides for.
vehicle, not a
that the
privately
town
owned
owns.
Administrative vehicles.
Administrative vehicles. So,
So it's mostly things like, if the assessors need a vehicle to go out and do their assessments, building commissioner, planner, sometimes they're assigned cars that are basic cars. And so those would be subject to the policy. Any vehicle with a gross vehicle weight of 8,500 pounds or greater, which is a 3/4 ton pickup and larger, is exempt from the policy. With the way most towns are run these days, there are, at most 8 to 12 vehicles in their stable that are subject to the policy. It's usually very few. And have you guys taken advantage of any electric vehicles yet?
We don't have a program for it, but there are electric vehicles in town.
So it's not a mandate. The policy basically says that if you have a certain type of vehicle, you look it up on our list of what it is, and you look at a mile per gallon rating, and whatever car is bought needs to meet that mile per gallon rating. It's pretty straightforward. It has not been a big issue in any of the 210 green communities that are already designated. So.
And some, I know of at least one town that neighbors us that when it came time to purchase new vehicles, they actually saw a competitive grant and got approval, so they got monies to lease electric-only vehicles. So even if you're coming up and you're like, I want to get something beyond, there can be help for that through the program.
So there's a little bit of work to do on the criteria 3. I'm available as a resource to the town. As Brad explained, we also provide grant money to the regional planning authorities, and so that's MAPC for Hingham. And so they'll have a chunk of money available to provide services to Hingham to help develop that energy reduction plan and establish the baseline. So, that grant money comes from us as well at DOER.
And that's 20% townwide, or?
Yeah, so that's just for your municipal operations, right? So that's, anything that's town hall, your public safety, your DPW, your schools, things.
Town with a capital T.
Right.
Yep. And you've got 5 years to meet that goal, and if you fail to meet it, so far there haven't been any repercussions.
So it's a goal, it's a plan and a goal. Some towns, it's easier to achieve that than in others for various reasons, and so there's no downside to not making it within 5 years. We just keep working with you. Sometimes certain scenarios in terms of your, the town budget that they're trying to deal with doesn't always make it easy to be able to, make some capital expenditures that will help you with efficiency if we can't pick up the rest. So it's a goal. It's not a hard and fast requirement in terms of the result. It's a hard and fast requirement that we have to have a plan together when you apply to become a designated green community.
And tell me if this is true. So if the town's facilities are already fairly efficient and new, it would be more difficult to get to that as opposed to
So
a
it
town
can-
that has lots of older buildings.
It can be.
It's kind of the more lower hanging
Yeah,
fruit.
so if your baseline is low, and the reason it's low is because you've done a lot of efficiency already, it can make it a little more challenging, but we usually figure a way to get there.
I don't think any town is so efficient yet that that's.
We haven't had that happen yet. So,
Are there any other
questions?
Just sort of clarification. So it looks to me like the most work is in these building code regulations and expediting permitting process and so on. And then the other big challenge is this energy reduction plan.
So,
Is that true?
So criteria 1 and 2, you're already in compliance, and that was done through the zoning bylaw that's been passed already at town meeting. So the only thing that is, a lot of work on that is, getting the warrant article done, and with zoning, you have to go through public notice, public hearing. That's all been done. And then, the stretch code, it's the same thing. Us coming to the town, talking about what it is, drumming up support for people to go to town meeting and vote in favor of adoption, and getting the vote done. The one that is the most, pencil, paper, grind out work is number 3, which we'll do when you guys pass this at town meeting on April 23rd, right? And it's a lot of work, but it's a really good thing to do. I really recommend that all my towns, whether they want to be a green community or not, they should know what their energy baseline is, and they should try to come up with a plan on how they can reduce their energy usage by some percentage, because it's smart business. Towns that are, well thought out, and this is a well thought out town, you have the kind of, volunteer activity, you have your advisory committee, you have a capital plan here. It really all fits that whole way of doing business. So to formalize it, with your application to us is just, it's a deliverable that you might not have yet, but a lot of it's already thought out.
Just to add to that, so before we realized we were eligible to pursue a green community designation, the Energy Action Committee has been working over the past couple of years with various municipal buildings to bring in energy efficiency measures. We've had the most success at the library and the country club. I don't have the figures in front of me, and I apologize, but the library, through some efficiency measures there, changing lights, tightening the doors, and things of that nature, we're able to reduce by thousands of dollars per year the energy usage of the library, and that will add, that's cumulative. Each year you get those same savings back. So when you think about just what you can achieve by doing a couple of small things in dollar savings terms, to get $150,000 and perhaps more in grant money to execute on a well thought out, identified plan, not only do you get that money to implement those measures, but the town then gets those accumulative savings back. So there's a lot more that can be done with that.
Avoided cost and also hopefully help with some of your capital measures.
How do things like incentives for solar, renewables and so on tie into this?
So it doesn't tie into my program really at all. It's separate and distinct, and it's available through other, like either through the CEC or, those types of things. So my program is absolutely energy efficiency first. We want people to realize as much savings as they can at first. We promote renewables, but that's really, you don't want to be providing renewable electricity to an inefficient electrical load. That just doesn't, one thing doesn't really jive with the other.
A light plant has, has incentives for, say, solar, and actually the Commonwealth is they're past being in the process. They're rewriting the various incentives that are out there for solar, and there's going to be 2 different programs, one for those electric customers who are serviced by investor-owned utilities, Eversource, National Grid, and then the municipal light plant towns. And the program, and I say this with great pride, but the program that the state is adopting for municipal light plant towns, they are adopting based on what Hingham has been doing for probably 10 years. So they're going to match on a per kilowatt hour basis an incentive. We've been doing it, like I say, for 10 years. The Commonwealth is talking about doing a 75-cent match per kilowatt. We've been doing a $1 match per kilowatt. So presuming that this program comes into play, and I was at a meeting with their bosses last week, and that it's going to happen. So likely what will happen in Hingham is you get 75 cents per from the Commonwealth, and you get $1 from us, so we'll almost double the incentive that is going to be available. And then we have,
is that for residential?
It is for residential.
Yep.
And what the commissioner and the renewable director was saying was that if there isn't enough, if not enough people avail themselves of this, they are considering, or will consider and expect to extend it into smaller commercial for systems under 25 kW. So there is the state is committing $3 million worth of matching money, and various municipal light plants committed a total of over $1 million. And Hingham Light committed a total of $175,000 in matching, and last year we did $170,000. So we've, agreed to go further than what we did last year. And last year we didn't add, HMLP customers, over 50 HMLP customers added solar to their roof last year, which is way beyond what has happened in the last 10. So we'll see.
Over 80.
50 this past, in 2017.
Okay, over 50, got it.
So that's a great deal with a municipal light plant. Again, they don't have to do any of that. They also have complete say over whether or not they'll interconnect you. It's not to speak badly of anybody else, but it's not as well received in some of the other MLP territories. The whole thing, interconnection,
Yeah.
matching. It's a very progressive way of looking at it here in Hingham.
I take great pleasure in telling my peers that they should start acting more like HMLP.
Everybody wants to be more like Hingham, right, Paul?
Better you say that, Seth.
I have 84 cities and towns. I love them all. Right now,
Equally.
right
Just
now,
like a parent, they love each of their kids equally.
right now, I really love Hingham. Right.
So from the HMLP perspective, what do you think about this program?
I think it's a great deal.
Is
I
it a-
think by becoming a green community, Hingham will, the town of Hingham and Hingham residents will be able to have money available to them that they otherwise would not. It's a great deal. So if you're an investor-owned utility town, you pay a per kilowatt hour assessment that makes you then eligible to get some of these monies. Because a prior commissioner or secretary chose to expand the definition of who became eligible, it's really a great deal for a municipal light plant town, because municipal light plant customers aren't paying the per kilowatt hour assessment, but they're able to take advantage of that money. So it's really a no-brainer that way.
And what Paul said is 100% true. Here's the thing: is you know how that works, right? In government, like the guys that write the bills the best. So that bill was written that way. So it said that if you didn't contribute to the Renewable Energy Trust, you weren't eligible to be a green community. That's not where the green community money comes from, though. Right? It comes from other sources that you guys are paying into as electric customers in Massachusetts. And so that's why I was saying earlier, it's more fair to try to find a way to be inclusive with the municipal light plant towns than to say, well, you're not paying into this renewable energy trust, and even though that's not where the money source comes from for that 20 million bucks, you can't get in. So I think it's been a good.
Light plant towns have been paying into this fund, RGGI money, the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, and we've been paying into that since it became, but for various reasons, we've never been able to get money out of that. So for whatever it's worth, the first time we met with the commissioner, the DOER, and they said, well, you guys don't contribute to this, so we're not going to give you any of this smart money. The tops of all the muni heads, guys' heads came off. We said, hey, we've been paying into RGGI for 15 years now, and we haven't gotten a dime of this, so please don't tell me that we're going to be, that we haven't been subsidizing this kind of thing. So, eventually they came around. We've been meeting with them for probably 2.5 years. They came around, so it's a good story.
So I used to work in the generation business, and my power plant had to pay for those. So the Reggie auction money come from allowances that have to be paid by the generators. And so that's where the flow starts. And then, like Paul's outfit, when they have to buy power, the cost for those allowances is in that. And so,
Will you say once again what that acronym stands for, Reggie?
Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative.
Okay, thank you.
it's a consortium of 9 Northeast states in the District of Columbia. And what they do is they require any fossil fuel fired generating station, so it's over 25 megawatts. So like the plant over in Weymouth, when they emit a ton of a CO2 equivalent, they gotta pay for that. They gotta pay for that allowance. Does that make sense? It's called a cap and trade program.
Yes.
So we have to, so HMLP annually reports how much fossil fuel generation we have bought, and then there's a formula, and we have to kick in money to that.
And so then see the ACP? That's alternative compliance funds. So every retail seller of electricity in Massachusetts, except for you guys, I think, right? 10% of your portfolio, so of the power that I sell, that portfolio, is supposed to be renewables. And if you choose not to use that full 10%, if you buy 95%, that's either done through nuclear or fossil fuel, that 5% that you didn't make towards that 10%, you have to pay alternative compliance payments. That money goes into a trust that DOER manages as well, and so that's another place where our money, our grant money has come from. So there's a couple different revenue streams. Our funding is strong. We are outside of appropriation. So at this time of year, when sometimes things start getting chopped up on Beacon Hill, to meet the fiscal year budget stuff, we're outside of that. And the legislation was written that way. So we've funded right up to our max every year that we've been in existence since 2009. And like I said before, we've already granted over $85 million worth of grants. We have over 75 competitive grant applications that are on file right now. The competitive grants that we awarded last year were a little over $14 million. We've got a budget this year of 12. So that 85 number is going to go up to at least 97 by sometime in the middle of this year. And then we'll have new designation grants as well, which usually end up being somewhere between 3 and 5 million. So, our funding's been strong. You could check in with any of the towns nearby in terms of how it's going. I've been working with Situate and Rockland, Hanover for a long time. Cohasset, not quite as long, but Weymouth, Marshfield. There's a fair amount of the region that's been doing it, and I think that if you checked in with them, I think they've been very happy with it.
Well, and I can add to that, we actually have. We surveyed these towns and others to ask their experience, and if we gave them a rating scale of 1 is bad and 5 is good, or they're the best, how would you rate your experience? Everyone actually came back with a 5 and said it was absolutely worth it, would highly recommend joining the program and taking advantage of it. So. Yeah.
I know I'm going to ask a related question. It doesn't have to do with the stretch.
Okay.
I understand stretches for new construction. But just so happens yesterday, Governor Baker and Secretary Beaton proposed to start rating all existing structures starting January 2021. And of course, so now a lot of people are going to want to start making their homes more energy efficient between now and whenever they're planning on selling them, so they get a nice score. Is these same funds for RGGI auctions and ACP funds are those going to be made available to existing structures so they can get better ratings?
So,
If you're a green community.
so that program's really already in place. The Mass Save program is already in place.
Well, Mass Save does about 60,000 audits a year, and there's a lot more houses than that.
Right, so,
Is Mass Save going to get
so I
budget
can't,
increase?
yep, so I can't answer your question because, quite truthfully, the announcement of that
Well, it's
potential new legislation, that was a surprise to all the regional coordinators in my program. So
right.
we didn't know anything about it coming out. But, you know, the thing of it is that it's only going to require people to get a score, all right? There's not going to be a target like there is with our program. And it's only going to be required if the bill, you know, goes through the bill-making process and comes out the way it was proposed, which almost never happens, right?
Well, I would hope Mass Save would get more money.
Well, so
Maybe they'll
Mass
pass
Save,
this bill.
but Mass Save gets their money in a different way. Mass Save gets their money through the three-year energy efficiency plans that the regulated utilities have to get through the DPU.
Okay.
So that's how that process works.
And what the program that was announced yesterday will require, if it becomes law as was suggested yesterday, is for when people are selling their houses.
Yeah.
So if you're not selling your house, you don't have to get, you don't have to have that audit and then get that number.
That's right.
The thinking being that if you have thinking of doing something with your house, you're gonna fix it up, and get that better number. As you can imagine, the real estate industry is not thrilled with that.
They're always happy with a nice low
They
score.
like that 6% commission.
They're always happy with a nice low score so they can say that this house saves you this amount of money
What's
on
going
your
to make this
energy bill, so it's
new
worth more.
program more attractive? The new construction.
Just saying. Depends on how you look at it. But yeah, that's not our requirement. I really can't answer that question. I believe that that'll all come out in the way the legislation ends up coming out of committee and.
Well, I'm all in favor of you getting more money.
So we don't plan on getting any more money than that amount for our program anytime soon. In fact, when our legislation that created us was done in the Green Communities Act of 2008, we were funded up to $10 million. And when Governor Baker did a new energy bill about 2 years ago, the new administration liked our program so much that they doubled the funding. So we're going to do everything we can to deliver all that 20 million. Our overhead's low, too, in our program, just so you know. We're only about 7%, which is pretty good.
All right.
Any other questions then? All right, well, I want to thank you very much for attending and your interest. Thanks to Emily and Michael for their support, Paul as well, and of course for our presenters, Seth and Will. So thank you very much. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.